Hey, Andrea. Unlike all of our other episodes where you always have to interject some Jessica Fletcher and Murder She Wrote, you don't have to do that today because today we are going to Cabot Cove for the entire episode. Are you excited?
I am beyond excited.
So, when I was walking with my wife this morning, she asked, "Are you going to turn off all of your listeners by talking about just Murder She Wrote?" So, I will say,
Find out.
we get a lot of positive people who seem to be on your side on this, so we will find out. We will find out. But
Yay.
this is Eric,
This is Andrea.
and this is Hallmark Mysteries.
And more.
This podcast was created by fans for fans and is not affiliated with or sponsored by Hallmark or the Hallmark channel.
Okay, Andrea, I've got a little bit of a rant follow-up. We had a lot of people reach out to us, and as we went forward, that Hallmark Mysteries will be returning to Mysteries, so they're not going weeks and weeks and weeks of just Christmas movies.
Thank
So
goodness.
makes me feel a little bit better. Have you been watching any of them?
Not a one.
Not a one.
Not a one.
I watched a couple.
Which
Some of
ones?
them, well, let's see. What did I just watched yesterday? Like, what's it called? The Best Christmas Present or something like that, where Sam Page is the like
Mm,
Christmas shopper kind of thing, and then of course falls in love with the
a
girl.
classic trope and
Yeah,
storyline.
and it's like one of those ones though, if you actually dive into it, you realize it's pretty creepy that here it is, some guys hired him to buy the perfect gift for his girlfriend, and what does he do? He steals the girlfriend. So if you really, once again, you can't go too deep in some Hallmark rom-coms because then you're like, oh, this is cringy actually. But
Yeah,
I love Sam Page, and I think he's great in it, and so I really liked it. But as I was like actually thinking about it, I was like, uh-oh. So I quickly stopped thinking and just enjoyed it.
I know you can't. I mean, all of them, you have to kind of stay surface level. If you really dive deep, I mean, none are exactly accurate for their jobs or careers. And if you dive into some of those relationship dynamics, they do get a little creepy and a little weird at times. So you gotta stay up here with them.
Yet somehow people like it, so I don't know. It's
We do.
interesting.
I mean, for the
Yeah, I
most
know.
part.
Yeah, I know. All right. The other thing to quickly update is I thought Elizabeth Hedstrom from Mystery Island was like you. I thought she was very
Active.
tall, towered, and then I was quickly told in our DMs, no, I'm wrong. Now she's not short per se, but she's definitely on the shorter side. She's 5'4". So you got what, 6 inches on her?
Yeah.
But and then even when I
Yeah.
looked around, I went in and I was looking at like pictures from the movie. And yeah, she's definitely one of the shorter characters, though I think it's the maid or one of them has to be 5 feet because she towers over one of them. But yeah, I was completely wrong, and I guess just her those espadrilles or whatever they're called as she runs through the desert or the jungle, excuse me, not the desert. The jungle makes her look taller than she really is. So
Mhm.
there you go. There's our
Mhm.
updates. You have anything else to update? Or should we start talking Jessica
No, I'm
Fletcher?
ready to dive in. So
Okay.
you know where I'm
Uh,
at.
Before we start, I have a couple questions that
Okay.
as being an expert, I want you to answer for me. Is ironically, I've seen like 15 minutes of an episode here, 20 minutes there, but I've never watched a complete episode until this week. So one of my questions is, why does she write? Do they ever say why she writes as JB Fletcher instead of just Jessica Fletcher?
I am trying to think if they ever revealed that. Maybe they did. They had not that I can recall though. Maybe in later episodes,
Because
but
they're
not
not,
that I'm not thinking of an episode of why. I mean, maybe just to like disguise herself, but like
but they have her
everyone
picture on it.
I was just gonna say, I'm like by the end of the series, like season 12, episode 24, like everyone knows who she is. Like she's supposed to be this world famous author. So it's not like she's disguised anymore. So that's a great question.
Yeah, she's on the cover of the book.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I thought because at first I thought when they were talking about it, oh, she doesn't want to know that she's a woman writing mysteries. But then you realize like very quickly in that very first episode we watched, he points at the picture of herself. All right, Next
Yeah, and they have an
question.
episode like Who Killed JB Fletcher? And it's like a town in Texas, and they report, like the news media reports that JB Fletcher is dead because there's another person who went by that name. And
Oh,
so it was a whole big scandal. It's actually a really cute episode.
all
So
right.
that would be what I would recommend as well if you haven't watched that one.
All right. Well, I guess that kind of leads a little bit into my next one is do they ever actually go into her backstory? I know she's a widow,
Mhm.
but that's about it.
They talk about Frank in one of the episodes. They have her meet up with him and some of his buddies from the
Who
army.
who who's Frank?
That's her ex or her dead husband. So her husband passed away. That's why she's a widow. And so
You
they,
typically the reason.
well, that's why they refer to as that. I'm assuming they did not refer to her as a widow in the episodes that you watched
No,
then.
she did because she talked
Okay.
about with the first one, they talk about, oh, that was my husband's pipe and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, that was Frank. And so Frank passed away. And so they meet with the army buddies. You get to know a little bit more about the dynamics there. And they never had kids, that was stated. So she has a lot of nieces and nephews that
Right.
she visits, and they are heavily shown, I guess, throughout the entire series. Like Grady is the most
Oh,
common nephew that they see. But she does have other nieces, nephews that she goes to their towns, like San Francisco, and solves mysteries. And,
okay. So
that's
we
how they
didn't,
kind of weave it in.
all right, we didn't meet any family in these, so I did not know she had a family. Okay, that's interesting. Okay.
No, we did not in any of these. And there was like I just watched one with Grady. There's a great one that they go to Cabot Cove and Jessica's laid up in bed all day, and he has to kind of go out in the town and help solve the mystery, kind of not. I mean, you can kind of get to know his character, which he's smart, but sometimes maybe not the best with the
Seems like everyone
ladies
seems like
or
that's
book
everyone
smart.
around her.
Yes.
Okay. So why did Amos leave? And then Ethan, who was a
Well,
pretty
I will
big
share that on
character.
the episode.
Okay.
And I will also share about Ethan. Those are my Andrea's random facts that I'm going to share at the end of our review of each episode. So I do have both of those.
Okay. Because Ethan seemed like he was pretty big and then all of a sudden gone. Amos was in there for a few seasons, so that seems like it probably is a little more typical of that, but okay. So then, other than the sheriff and the doctor, who from the 4 episodes we watched for this, there weren't really repeated characters. Are there like the town people who you see all the time, like all the women who were in the salon, the beauty salon? Are they in many episodes? You just said actually some of the relatives are, but are there more, or is it pretty much just kind of the sheriff and the doctor are the mainstay?
So in the beauty shop, Eve Simpson, the real estate lady, she is in multiple episodes in Cabot Cove. So she's kind of a main staple throughout the Cabot Cove episodes. We also have Loretta. She was the beauty shop owner. She is in a few, not a ton, but they do bring in the beauty shop throughout.
Okay.
I suppose the first maybe 8 seasons. It's not all the way through season 12. And then there is a guy that starts as a real estate agent. I don't want to like spoil. And then
Okay.
he
I
becomes a
have a
sheriff.
comment about that later,
And
but
there is a little, I don't want to spoil it for people, but there is another guy who is in the earlier seasons, but eventually he stops being in them, and you'll see why. And then I think that's really about it. I mean, you occasionally have some townspeople, but nothing like they're like the one I was just watching before we hopped on this episode. Like there's a new gym owner in town. We only see him that one episode. He's never
okay.
back. Same with the butcher. It's not like he's a mainstay that we watched. And the same with like the bookstore owner. Those aren't people that we predominantly see. And
Gotcha.
same thing with rotating deputies. So it seems like every season they get new deputies. They kind of rotate in and out. So none of those are mainstays.
Gotcha. Okay. The I did get one little fact of, and maybe you're gonna reveal this. If I steal your thunder, but it's my one I have, is that Jessica Fletcher, or excuse me, um,
Angela Lansbury.
Angela Lansbury, thank you. She is the only person who was in all 288 episodes. So
That would make sense because yeah,
obviously,
she
right.
doesn't have a ton of mainstay. And there is a season though where she just narrates because she wanted a break. So those episodes are heavily by the fans. We skipped that season, or we skipped those episodes. So
Interesting.
I want to say it's like season 8 or 9, and it didn't do well in ratings. So it only lasted a season because obviously that's a lot for her to film. I mean,
Right.
she's the mainstay, and so she needed a break. That's what they tried. Unfortunately, it didn't work with ratings. Even me watching it after the fact, because she does have some like we didn't watch any with them, but sometimes she has some sidekick detectives. Like she has one in Boston that he comes in and helps her a lot. She has one from England that comes in and helps her a lot. And so they are kind of mainstay characters. So they try to do a little spin-off of that detective leading the case. And it
Gotcha.
just didn't do well for ratings. So
All right. And then I'm sure we could talk all hour about this, but just kind of what is it, just to sum up why you like the series so much? Because it's not like generationally you, right? It was by the time you're watching TV, it's kind of all cleared out and just a rerun kind of thing. So what it was it that drew you in so much to the series to make it you love it?
so the first episode, because I wrote that, it aired in like I was probably 3 weeks old. It aired in the end of September in 1984. So I was born on the 17th of September. So I was
I was starting
clearly
high
not
school, or
remembering
excuse
it.
me, I was starting my senior year of high school.
And I was just born. So I do actually remember my mom watching this on Sundays. So because it was 12 seasons, I was 12 by the
Right.
time this finished. And so I do remember my mom every Sunday, and I would occasionally watch some with her if they weren't too like scary. So as I have with Sydney's favorite, she liked the spooky ones. If they were spooky like that, I was out. And so I didn't watch those episodes. But if my mom's like, "Oh, I think you would like this one," then I would, stay and kind of watch it with her. And then I rediscovered this when I was like single in my mid 20s, and Netflix had it on. And then it was a great bingeable show. And so I just watched all of the episodes, and it was kind of like my little, your cozy show that you could watch in the comfort of your little apartment. And I would bake on like a rainy Sunday and just have murder she wrote going on. And it wasn't too scary. So for me, living alone, you're also like, I like mysteries because I loved the Boxcar Children and Nancy Drew, reading those books growing up. But I didn't want to be like overly scared. So like Dateline was way too much for me back in my single 20s because it was too freaky and too real. So this was kind of my guilty pleasure with mysteries.
Yeah, I will say, so my wife's the ID, I've talked about it before. She's the big ID channel, fanatic of it. But when like I'm traveling or something like that, she does find herself being like ID channels a little heavy for her, being alone in the house kind of thing, because
Yes.
you see all the
You see the
crazy
way that people
stuff that
get in and you're
happens.
like, and that's real
Exactly.
life. You're just kind of like, oh
Yes.
my gosh, what's going to
Yes.
happen?
I had to buy her, she's got a taser now and stuff. So I'm like, I know I am going to be the one who gets tased when all said and done, but whatever. So, okay. All right. So I'm going to share a couple overall thoughts, and you feel free to chime in. Um, but I have to say what you've been waiting for. My overall thought is I found myself actually quite enjoying them way more than I expected.
Oh my gosh, that makes me so excited. I thought you were going to come on and say you hated it, and I was going to be
No.
devastated. Oh.
I will say I was definitely preconceived that when they were airing and for years and all the way up until relatively recently, I was always like, oh, good God, she annoys me. She's terrible. The worst. How could anyone watch the show? Terrible. She's, the Celine Dion of TV. Cannot do it. And I found myself enjoying it. In fact, we watched one episode Friday night, and the keep the home fries cooking or whatever it's called. And my wife was like, the next morning, she's like, all right, that wasn't actually that bad either. So
Yeah, she
she
liked it
now
too.
granted,
Yay.
she when I had to watch the next two, she didn't say, oh, you know, wait for me, but there's that.
She at least
All right.
enjoyed it.
The other, but you kind of maybe discounted this a little bit, but it's got to still be there. But 288 episodes, Cabot Cove has to have one of the highest murder rates in the country, if not the world, even though she
That's
does
always the ongoing.
travel,
Yeah, that's the
right?
ongoing joke.
Like I'm not sure about going to Cabot Cove. We talk about that. We joke about, going to Eden Lake, but that has eight. not 200.
That's why it's very believable to me because I'm like, I watch Murder She Wrote, and there's a lot of murders that happen. So
Okay, because that's your base of reality.
yes,
Okay. All right. My next thought is Jessica puts all of our Hallmark nosy sleuth or amateur sleuthers to shame because she just whatever rolls right in of I am running this murder case. No, like, oh, I'm getting out of it. When the sheriff getting a little bit pushing back, she's like, step aside. No, I am doing this. So anyone who's like, oh, why would, a baker go do that? Just watch a few episodes of this, and then you realize that, you know, the curious caterers of the world, they are by no means as pushy or whatever as Jessica is. So, no, I know
again,
it's
this is why
it's
those
the
things don't
genre,
bother me
right?
with the
It's the
Hallmark movies
genre,
because
right? All
this
right.
is my favorite.
So
Yeah, I
she
will. Should
doesn't.
I mention
Oh,
Sydney's favorite
go ahead.
quick?
Sure.
So Sydney's favorite, Reflections of the Mind, season 2, episode 6. So that's a spooky one. And it's when a phone call from Francesca's supposedly dead first husband precedes a fatal incident.
But who's
Jessica must,
Francesca?
just a random person in the
Okay.
episode, must unravel the truth from hysteria to find a killer. I don't remember this one off the top of my head, but that would be her recommendation. If you prefer the spooky, we watched the cozies today. So as we kind of break down each of these episodes, they're a little bit more of the cozy side than spooky side, but there are a couple that are really spooky. Cynthia Nixon from Sex and the City, she is in an episode. She plays a victim.
Who is
A
not in
murder.
these?
George Clooney is in these. We have Courtney Cox is in these. We have it's also really fun because
Okay.
kind of like the Golden Girls, which we also have a Golden Girl in this line. They have just different people kind of
We do.
popping up, and so it's really fun to see some of the actors, as young stars, and I really enjoy that kind of the who's who when you watch an episode. Sometimes Tom
Yes,
Selleck was in one.
I think if we were well, if I was older even, some of these people who were in the episodes that we watched, I would know. I didn't know who they were because they're like a generation before me too, but I'm guessing they were probably kind of popular TV stars, in the 60s and 70s or whatever. So as I looked at them, I will say most of the people who are the characters in this have passed away. But
Yeah, more the sheriff just passed away a couple years ago. I mean, so did Angela Lansbury,
right.
really, just a couple years ago, like right before her birthday, because her and my mom had the same birthday. So
Yeah, interesting.
yeah,
So Jessica doesn't drive.
correct.
Now, do they ever have winter episodes? Because Maine gets a ton of snow
They have one Christmas episode, but really no. Mostly it is never in the winter. Not very many.
because, yeah, I don't know how she gets around for,
The
I don't know,
sheriff picks her up. They
six
sent a car
months of
for
the
her.
year.
They
I
sent a car
guess
for
so.
her.
All right. All right. So here's one of the things. I think that overall the mysteries were quite good. They had really good plot devices in them, the things that we like in mysteries. But one of the things that stood out for me is the 44-minute format versus, which is an hour-long TV show, versus the Hallmark 2 hour, which is 122 minutes. The difference between allowing you to explore a little bit more, to build a little bit more of the mystery, it kind of you had to it just had to flow a lot quicker and it couldn't really dive in. It couldn't give us really good red herrings in that way. And you kind of had to just get from the murder to the solution far quicker, obviously, because it's about half the length, right? So I think that that is one of the things that's really good about the Hallmark mystery, that it does have a chance to build a little bit more of that mystery versus the hour-long episode, which kind of like you're just getting into it and it's like all of a sudden it's getting solved. So
That's why I like them because they're short, quick, easy watches. They do
yes.
have 4 mysteries or 4 movies, which they're okay. They're not my favorite. I prefer the series versus the
And
movies.
you see, that's where I guess we're a little different. Like what I love are when you go over to like the BBC stuff over on BritBox or Acorn, and they have the 3 episode ones that are like 6 hours to solve the whole mystery. Where so it really builds up and things like that. So, but like I say, I still had fun. I had a lot of fun. All right. Two more things is then actually three more. One, the acting in there is kind of like a lot of overacting. It's this that real kind of campy type acting. It's fun, but it is like when you're looking at them and like you see the reactions and everything like that, they're probably not winning a lot of like Emmys for supporting or guest roles or things like that. And I think our friend Candace Cameron Bure would have fit right in this as a guest with her acting skills. So I'm just like I'm thinking of the episode with the home fries with the diner guy and just how like over the top bad acting his was, but still fun. Uh, One, I also got all my 80s feels. So seeing like the technology, seeing the old credit card thing, just like all those little things of what life used to be. And we look at it right now and we're like, oh my God, archaic. And knowing like I lived through it and it was just the norm and stuff like that. I just had a lot of fun doing a little retro thinking. And the last thing I'll say is while our names we talked about were okay, there are some great episode names in this. Coal Miner, Slaughter, Alma Murder, Hooray for Homicide, and then the one that you were just watching this morning, A Body to Die For. I mean, the names of these episodes are just awesome. Awesome. All right. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Are we
Are-
giving, I guess, are we
I
giving
have rankings.
spoilers? Are we giving
Oh yeah.
spoilers?
I mean, this
Because it's
aired,
over 30, right? Okay, that's what I
well, it's
thought too.
40 years ago because I turned 40 this year. So yeah, it's 40-year spoiler coming at you guys.
Okay.
So season 1, episode 3. It originally aired October 7th, 1984. This is called Deadly Lady. Now, again, you messaged me, so this one might not be episode 3. This is where the IMDb and Peacock were a little off.
Well, it's
Deadly Lady is the
I
name.
think it's because like the one episode is a two episode thing.
Oh,
So
yeah.
so I think that's what messes it up.
Yeah. So it's a mysterious man who briefly stops by Jessica's house, turns up dead, supposedly swept overboard during a hurricane before Jessica even met him. Now, I did last minute switch this episode for you from a different one. It was
Oh,
something
wait.
with a driving. Yeah, I was going to do a driving one that they had because I wanted you to see Ethan. So my main thing was
Uh,
for you to meet the character Ethan because he does disappear, as we had said in season 2, which I'll talk about at the end here. So that's why I just wanted you to get a flavor for it. So for me, this is like I give it a 4. This is not my favorite, but I
wait,
really liked
4 out of 5, right?
4 out of 5. Yep.
Okay.
So I really
Just
liked the,
just so you know,
yeah.
I wrote down the IMDb's and it got a
Okay.
7.6, which is
Nice.
below average. And it was the lowest of the four that we did.
Okay. That would track for me too. This would be my lowest as well. Again, I just did this to throw in Ethan so you could kind of get a feel for him. So I love seeing Jessica in these early episodes and how they evolved her. So that I hadn't watched one of these beginner episodes in a while because Ethan, spoiler for me, is not one of my favorite characters. So
Mm,
in this episode, she's wearing a fishing cap. She's wearing jeans, that plain jacket, and then she's biking everywhere. And she just
right.
seems kind of like that small town author. And then if you kind of watch, even if you just watch these 4 episodes, you can see how her style has changed, her mannerisms, how she even is sitting like at the sheriff's office, like how she was leaning against the kiosk thing or the table. That first episode, this episode, compared to how she was towards the end, she would have never done that. And which is also I'm going to share about in my Andrea's random fun facts about this episode because there is a reason why. And then Amos is always, for me, a great side character. He's one of my favorites to see on screen with Jessica. I think they have great chemistry, and that's Tom Bosley. And they just really go well together. I think they play off each other well. And I really, when I first saw this series and then they switched sheriffs, I was really bummed. I ended up really liking Mort as well. I liked both sheriffs at the end, but when they first made that switch, I was like, no, he was so good. And they don't even have like a goodbye episode. They just kind of announce, come season 5, like, here he is, here's the new sheriff. And you're like, what? We didn't even say bye to him. So that was kind of a bummer, but I enjoyed this episode. I liked the sailor, the guy who ends up being murdered. I did enjoy his character too. And you can also see in this episode, for anyone who really has seen the whole series, they are trying to decide, do we give Jessica a love interest or not? Because they have a little chemistry there and they're kind of toying that line just like they did in the first two episodes,
Wait,
because it was a
her and the dead,
two-parter.
her and
Her and the
the,
guy who ends up dead.
yeah, yeah.
Like that is flirty as she will
Right.
get, besides the guy that, you know, ended up dead the first, or ended up being the murderer in episode 1, 2. That is, they're deciding, do we have, now mind you, it's 1984, can a single leading lady be our person through this series? So that's kind of what they were treading those waters. Is Jessica, can she be this alone without a supporting male partner? And so that's kind of the line, which again I'm going to share more about, that they played with. And you could see it in this episode, and you can see them kind of fighting, you know, probably Angela Lansbury fighting for her character, and you know, the network saying, no, I don't know, we might need a guy to be in every single one. You always have to have a love interest. Why else are people going to tune into you? So more
That's
more
that's
to more to
that's how
say on that.
Hallmark believes that. Like, we've talked about it with
And
Curious
you know, I
Cater.
don't. I don't like
Right.
that.
Like Curious Cater, they could have stayed, we said, as friends. They didn't
Yeah.
need to cross that line. We were happy, but Hallmark does think they do need to have that romance come in.
What about you? What would you give this one?
Um, I'll give it the 3.5.
Okay.
3.5. There's a like this is my introduction, obviously, and Jessica is quite smug in this, so that's my introduction to into Jessica. She's very smug. Like you said, she is like invites this rando dude sitting or in her yard weeding, who she has no idea it is, invites him in for a meal, and then it's basically like, "Hey, I'm leaving my door unlocked if you want to come back tonight." So, you know, a little part of that small town thinking, but also a little, yeah, I found her being a little saucy there. So I didn't know where it was going, and of course, didn't have to worry about it, but and then there's definitely you really early on just really know you're in New England when you meet the characters, you meet her, just the scenery, everything about it just screams New England. And then you said Amos is the great side character. Um, yeah, I had a lot of fun with him, but it is funny because, and I don't know, I guess it kind of does develop a little bit, but I don't know. But he calls her up and it's like, hey, Jessica, there's this, you know, dead body, and you should come on down here because I think it's not an accident. I think it's murder. So come on down. And then he spends the rest of the episode complaining about her meddling when he like invited her in. So I was like, whatever. But doesn't distract. It just, you know, it's just one of those things as you think, and that's and it sounds funny, and I don't want to say, oh, these are so lighthearted and you just shut off your brain because they actually have good mysteries to them, and the other ones we'll talk about, I think, have really strong mysteries. But it is a thing where you just like usually you can't dive too deep because then you'll just find all the holes in it there. So, but I will say that Ralph, I did kind of quickly think like he was the guy who was missing, but it does have that big twist where, you know, oh, he's killed. Nope, he's fake killed. Oh, wait, no, he really is killed. So, I thought that was pretty good. And
And
then
what
sorry, I did when the way Jessica solves it is by the daughter saying, "Oh, the pink, you know, the pink shoes." I was like, "Wait a minute. How did she know they were pink?" So I did pick up on that.
Nice.
But
That was, I was, my next question was gonna be, what did you think of the mystery
so
itself? And
yeah.
that's where I
So
think too, they had good twists there. And
yeah,
that little thing that she picked up, that you picked up, that is what Jessica's kind of known for. If you watch the series more, she picks up on the little, it's the little things that people say, and that she won't show it on her face, but that's where she has solved the crime. And then, you know, they'll sometimes replay it back and she's like, you said XYZ, or you did this, and how would you know that? Or, and you know, so that's kind of the cleverness of Jessica.
which is very similar to a lot of our, you know, sleuths on Hallmark. That's Hannah Swenson. That's one of her things is she notices little things um as well. So you know, so I get it. and like you said, it was a pretty good twist because I just go in one direction, then it went the other direction. Then I'm like, I have no idea. So I was saying all along, while I can't say I was like jaw dropping, I was never in these like convinced, oh, they're the killer until the very end of that's who it is. So, and once again, I think that's part of the 44-minute versus the hour and 20 minutes where it doesn't really give you a ton of time to figure the case out yourself. You sort of have to go at a pretty rapid pace. But I thought it was like I liked the mystery, and that was like the thing I was caught off guard for. I was not expecting the mysteries to be kind of as sophisticated as the mist. If you just strip it all away, all the, corniness of the everything else, and you just look at the actual mystery, they're pretty sophisticated, good, solid mysteries.
What about any standout scene or performance from this episode?
I'll go back to the the just the introduction of Jessica to sleuthing and bringing her all in with the, hey, come on down. Like, why is he calling her to come on down and then complain about her? So just for me being a total newbie to uh the whole series, it was that sort of introduction of Jessica as the crime solver that she is. So it just, like I say, for me, that was just the big thing because it's all new. And so I don't have a comfort level with her yet to say some of the side characters who it may be. Um, like, the scoundrel ex-boyfriend and stuff. I probably would have had a lot more fun with him if I wasn't just really absorbing Amos and Jessica.
Yeah, mine was Stephen Earle, the cosmetics typhoon character, the guy who came to her house and then ended up getting murdered. Like he was my favorite. I thought he was easy on the eyes for this old guy, I thought as well. And he just had this like kind of smolder and way about him. So I enjoyed him. And I mean, just because I've
I
watched this
could never
episode
be
so
your
many
wingman.
times.
Because we would be at the bar and I would be like, how about that guy? And then you have such a different taste than I would ever imagine when you're like, oh, that guy's not bad looking. I'm like, really? So it's interesting.
Well, I mean, it's
So
not like I'm gonna pick him up,
I
but
know fortunately, we don't have to worry about that on so many different
oh
levels.
gosh. So yeah, he was my favorite. I thought he was kind of a fun character. And it kind of our last category I put for our murder she wrote is does it hold up in 2024? Because now it's 40 years old. For me, I wrote I think it was really, and you'd said this as before we got started with kind of diving into this episode, looking at how life was, back in 1984. And he is this supposedly this huge makeup, cosmetics typhoon, and he can be completely anonymous in 1984. Nobody knows who he is. There's no internet to look him up. There's no way to it's not like they have his picture on the side of things, especially as a male. You're probably not going to put a male on the side of
Right.
female cosmetics because that might be weird. To Why would I trust a male to create these products? So he could truly just disappear, which I find really fun. And, we would never be able to do that nowadays with cell phones and people spotting and bank accounts, the whole thing. So I really enjoyed that aspect.
And I will say though, for like a small New England town, they probably you could get away with it more in a place like that than you could, yes, in
I don't think so.
much more
I've had this conversation because in a small town, because I'm from a town of 500 people, do you know how much people keep tabs on everyone? Who is
yeah,
that
but
moved into so and so's house? And
but
then
you don't know the out of town person who's the
yeah, they figure it
like
out. This
like
is
do they
small
know
town life.
Warren Buffett? Yeah, but he was just in there for a day kind of thing. It wasn't like he was
Yes.
there for a
Well,
week where
then he
they
got murdered, but
yeah.
yes.
He was face
But
down
that's if you
in the
are trying
ocean
to
pretty quick.
disappear. I don't know if a small town is the best place because a lot of people are want to know who is this person. I need to know about their life, and someone will get to know them and find out these details. That's just how it works in a small town. So I will tell you that, especially if you have kids. If you're maybe solo and alone, you might be able to get away with a little bit more. But if you have kids, people are finding out who you are.
But the one thing I'll say is I think in this one too is Amos shows his most competency in this one than other episodes. I think he seems, because once again, it seems like in this one, he's trying to keep a little bit of control still of I'm the sheriff and everything like that too. So in
And I
that
think that's them
aspect,
developing his character, like trying to
yeah,
figure out who
like,
is Amos
yeah, we
Tupper.
wanted to be more comic relief.
Right.
But like I said, I think because it's fundamentally a good mystery, I do think it holds up. Obviously you'd have to tweak it a little bit, like you said. I think doing the makeup tycoon and stuff like that, they probably would do something different, like use a investment type something, owns a hedge fund or something like that. But all in all, yeah, I think it'll hold up.
All right, well, here's my random fact. Now, this is my longest random fact, but I do want to read this because I do think it's really fascinating. And this tells you a lot about the direction I think of Murder, She Wrote. So this gives a lot of kind of background what's happening. So Captain Ethan Craig, who neither one of us really talked a ton about, did you like him? Again, he's not my
Well,
favorite.
I did, but I think part of the reason why he didn't have a huge role. He had a little bit and he seemed to be nice. I loved when they like, hey, let's go fishing at the end and that aspect. But he's also just one of those guys where I think going back to my childhood and getting nostalgic, he just seemed like he was one of those character actors of the 70s where he was just in a lot of things that I couldn't tell you exactly what they were. If I opened up IMDb, I could tell you, but he just had that totally familiar face to me of, once again, my youth. So in that aspect, I think I liked him, but I was projecting. It wasn't really necessarily his character per se, other than I did like at the end when it's, hey, the bass are going, let's go fishing. I really thought that was a cute ending to it.
See, for me, well, and you have just because you've only watched this one episode with him, he just is kind of mean to Jessica, and he's kind of like, "Let's go, woman,"
Oh,
and it's
he's
just
everything but that in this
I
episode.
hate that. Like that's how he is in this season. I
Eh,
don't like that.
That's
So
how you talk to
here's
women in 84.
well, no, because here's the episode or here's the article. This is from the New York Times in October 1985. So this is why Captain Ethan Craig was replaced. The weekly arguments between Mr. Fisher, who is a writer on the Murder She Wrote, and Miss Lansbury became come because she wants to expand the character, Jessica, that is. When the series began, Jessica Fletcher was a substitute school teacher riding her bicycle in Cabot Cove. Me, who had written one detective novel, now as the famous author of a half dozen bestsellers, she must avoid at all costs being sophisticated or jaded or superior, says Mr. Fisher. She must consort with people of a certain intellectual level, says Miss Lansbury, who fought tooth and nail against Jessica's relationship with the owner of a Cabot Cove fishing boat, Captain Ethan Craig, who also served as her handyman and a recurring character last season. There's something wrong with Jessica if she enjoys spending more than 15 minutes a week with this man, says Miss Lansbury. The character has been dropped and replaced by a doctor played by William Wyndham, Seth Hazlitt, with whom Jessica plays chess. Miss Lansbury has also fought and won a battle against the network, which wanted to supply her with a sidekick. The whole basis of the show is that Jessica is a middle-aged woman alone, says Miss Lansbury, and the network wanted to have a character joined at the hip who drove a car for me. She also resisted a serious romance, though for a while last season it seemed as though a different murderer was falling in love with her every week. I said no to those slight romantic liaisons. It makes her seem as though she has round heels, says Miss Lansbury, using a British expression that describes a woman who tumbles quickly into bed. So I found that article to be very interesting, and that kind of lays the foundation of Angela Lansbury won in this battle because this is Jessica Fletcher becomes who she wants her to be. If you watch all 12 seasons, you see this character evolve into that person. And I love that in 1984 she was fighting for this because I mean it was needed. It was needed.
Well, what's interesting about that too is in the 80s, like that time period, NBC was a machine and it was like the network. And so for her to be able to, it just shows you her
Wasn't she
power
CBS?
of, oh, was it CBS? That was
I think this was
NBC.
I think
Oh,
it was always CBS.
oh,
But I could be wrong.
I
Maybe
could
it
be
was
whatever.
started there.
But regardless, it just shows you to be able to stand up to the network. It does show you her power that she has because of, once again, her credit, but she came with, being nominated for Academy Awards, winning Tonys, Emmys, all those, or Golden Globes, whatever. She like came from very high pedigree into this. She wasn't just I moved to Pasadena to become an actress kind of thing. She was a very, very, reputable actor. So I do think that gave her a lot more credibility and power to push back on the network. I did get a little interesting fact too that I read that when it came time for this, it was between this and some sitcom, and her agent was pushing for her to do the sitcom. I don't know what the sitcom was,
Wow.
and she chose this instead. So could you imagine like how everything would be like? It could have been ended up being a one season show
Yeah,
without her. Who knows? Like
100%.
who it could have been.
Because
And then I
clearly the
also
network wanted
know,
it going a different direction, and that would not have been, I don't think, a winner.
and the network also later wanted to revive it with Octavia Spencer becoming the new Jessica Fletcher. And she put her foot down and was like, nope, not happening. We're not reviving it. And so she was able to beat the network again at that because she just had such ownership of this character. And as we just said, she's developed so much power in that, which, you know, may come across sexist. It's not meant to. It's mostly at times and all that. But for a woman to be able to just do that is impressive, right? Because it was not happening all the time at that time in, history.
100%. All
All
right,
right,
well, let's dive
let's
into
keep those home fries cooking.
No, we're on Murder Takes the Bus, Eric. You skipping
Oh,
ahead. Murder Takes the Bus is the next episode.
never mind.
So, season 1, episode 18 or 20. Again, Peacock says 20. This originally aired March 17th, 1985. Murder Takes the Bus. This is the fan favorite. Jessica and a slew of passengers are forced to take refuge from a storm at a remote diner when one of the passengers is found stabbed in his seat on a bus to Boston. So for me, this is a 5. This is a fan favorite for a reason. It gives you twists, turns. You get to know these characters on the bus. It's a classic mystery where it's contained into that one location. Blanche, or Rue McClanahan from Golden Girls, she's a passenger on the bus. I love Golden
Which
Girls, so
it's funny,
I
I did
love
not
that.
recognize her at first either.
Really? Oh
Nope. It
man.
took me probably like the third scene with her when I'm like, wait a minute, that's Blanche. Because she was such a different, Blanche is
Character.
so big and whatever.
Yes.
Whereas at first she's kind of timid, she's got that
Quiet.
overbearing husband.
Yeah. I mean, it's a cozy setting. You get to know all of the people on the bus. So every time I watch this, I mean, if it's on, I definitely watch this episode. I find this to be, it's a classic for a reason.
It was also I don't know, if I just go through all of the episodes for Murder She Wrote, but of the 4 we talked about, it was the highest IMDb with an 8.5. So when you say fan favorite, it at least, an 8.5 on IMDb is a pretty darn high
Especially for a show
score.
that's been out for
So,
40 years.
yep.
What do you think?
Um, I think that it showed a little bit of rain does not hurt a New Englander because it's pouring rain and they're just like, throw on your jacket, let's just roll and stuff. And well, I'm in Arizona, whereas if it rained like that, it would shut down the city for a week and stuff. And I just found out how they're just, oh, go out the payphone, go use the payphone out there in this, rainstorm. Okay. So I had a lot of fun with that. Um, for me, this one had a huge Agatha Christie vibe to it. It's that closed room device, which is a classic mystery plot. And I hate to say it, that's a Mystery Island vibe of how they same thing. It's like, it's got to be one of these limited characters because there's nobody else there. And having to determine who it is just a great device for mysteries. So loved that. Um, it though it did have a little bit of the uh the dirty lady, I think, to it where he reveals something and then it gets no, sorry,
The
that's
Deadly Lady? Deadly Lady?
Dele. Never mind. That's the next one that we're talking about. But that is the home fries. But the other thing is Amos does in this one, even though he's like more concerned with like the meals at the show, or the conference that they're trying to get to. In this one, he does show like he is an actual sheriff when he's like, "Oh, the damper wasn't done, so I know that you weren't really didn't have to be working on the bus like you said." Like so, even though it had the twist where I guess that's in a way where it was like the what was it called again? The one we just watched, Deadly Lady.
Deadly Lady.
So it did have that where it was the killer reveals it, but then you dismiss him only to come back to again. So in that aspect, I thought that was a really good twist too, because like, oh, okay, take him off the list. Nope,
Yeah.
he's back on it. So I thought this
Was this
totally
your
for
favorite?
me of the four. Um, between this and keep the home fries cooking.
Ooh, you did like my favorite. Oh, yay.
So the two of them, I had a lot of fun, and it was once again kind of a same type thing with that it's got to be one of these people, right? I like that because it just has that really Agatha Christie classic golden age mystery vibe to it, which is kind of my jam. So I liked it. But I
Wow.
also one of the really cool things was, like I say, that closed room. It all takes place essentially in the diner, right?
Mm-hmm. The
So
bus
it's
and the
not a
diner.
whole bunch of other things going on. It really is just thoughtful. You have to think your way through it. So I like that.
Yeah, well, for me, like standout scene or performance, of course, Blanche. Having Golden Girl on there. And again, as we had just said, she plays such a different character. She's a librarian in this one, and
Oh
she
yeah,
even
she's definitely
steals
not
she steals
Blanche.
that book, and she's just this quiet and like kind of knitter, has her glasses on with her sweater, little cardigan sweater on, and kind of in the background. So for me, watching her in a completely different setting, different character, I enjoyed seeing that.
All right, so you are a Golden Girl fan. You may not know this
I
off
am.
the top of your head, but had Golden Girl started by this time? So she was like, this was just
Ooh,
like
I
she
want
already
to
was
say
Blanche.
it's very close in time frame. I'll look that up while you share your standout scene or performance.
Okay, so for me, I liked the diner owner
Okay.
because I was convinced he was the killer because he was the most unlikely, didn't know who it could be. Like how would he know all this stuff? And somehow I was convinced the whole time, and I love solving the mysteries. I thought he like slipped through the back when he was doing something and went out and did it, and it was going to be this wonderful twist. So I just loved that character because I was convinced he was the killer and it was going to be the wonderful twist. Even though it didn't turn out to be, I didn't mind because I thought it was a really good reveal because, like I said before, they said who the killer was, but then they dismissed him only for him to actually have been the killer. And it was really interesting the way that he did it. He's like,
Mhm.
I stick the screwdriver in their head just to cover up. Though you think an autopsy would reveal it, but whatever. Um, but yeah, so I really liked that aspect um of it. That
And
character, I
Golden
should say.
Girls aired. So this aired March 85. Golden Girls started September of 85. So it had not yet started.
All right, so
So,
she was probably been cast getting
yep.
ready
Yeah.
to roll, but had not started yet.
So does this hold up in 2024?
A
Nowadays, for me,
thousand
I
percent yes.
I can't see this happening. I love
Oh,
how we have
because
complete
people don't
opposite.
because well,
We all have
yeah,
phones.
because
There's no way people are
people don't
interacting
take
like this.
buses and
Well,
whatever,
that too.
and you have your cell phones. But the
Right.
once again, the mystery and the way it is,
Yeah. The
yeah. But
actual,
you're right. You're
there's
yes.
no way. Because do you think people are going to sit in a diner? No, they're going to call someone and be like, I don't care if it's raining, come pick me up. And someone's going to try to go through the storm and
You'd get the
get in an
Uber.
accident on the way there. Just like the whole thing. I'm like, this, I don't see people being patient and sitting there with strangers in a diner when a murder happened. There's no way that's happening nowadays.
Or being $9.60 to get to Portland on the
Right.
bus.
Right.
Whereas, yeah, I get it.
Oh,
But no,
so
I think as I guess when I say does it hold up,
the
this
mystery itself,
mystery, the
yeah, this
mystery,
episode,
yes,
100%.
the mystery holds up. The
100%.
circumstances would have to be tweaked, of course.
Yeah. Well, here's my random fact for this episode. So Don Stroud's character, he's the one on the CB radio in this episode when
Okay,
he was
he's the
hit.
traveling salesman, quote unquote, who's really the
Yes.
insurance guy or whatever.
Yes. So when he
Right.
was hit from behind during the period that the lights were out, but since the power was out at the time and the shot was fired just before the lights came back on, the power had to have been out while he was supposedly on the CB radio, and the radio needed power to operate. So that's my random fact of an oopsie that they did, which totally would make sense because you can't do that if there is no power, especially in the 80s. You're having no power. There's no generator happening until that. I think the guy had said he had one, but he didn't have that generator on at that time. So that's the oopsies.
Yeah,
So moving on,
interesting.
because I don't want to make us like a 2-hour episode, Eric.
But
So we still have two episodes
Jessica
to go.
Fletcher. You'll talk about it
No,
till tomorrow.
I
Okay,
know.
let's
I'm
get
just
it.
trying to
Let's all
keep
right,
us
now we can
somewhat
get the home
paced.
fries cooking.
So season 2, episode 14, Keep the Home Fries Burnin'.
Or burning.
January 19th, 1986, it aired. Now, the description's very short. Poisoned strawberry preserves served at the Joshua Peabody Inn result in murder. Now, I will tell you this, Joshua Peabody is kind of like a thread throughout the Cabot Cove episodes as someone that like Amos really believes in and loves, and they debate, is he an actual person or not? And now they do have an episode later in a couple seasons where they kind of do reenactments and like find out if he actually was a person. So I do like that thread. So I don't mind that they had this in, because named Joshua Peabody, this might have been our first kind of introduction to that kind of theme, but that is something that they do pull throughout the series.
Okay, that's good to know because he definitely does do when they're like talking about the mystery and they're saying he's fictional, and Amos is like,
Right.
no, look at this. There's a whole
Right.
story about him.
So some of the townspeople think fictional, some do not.
Yeah.
So of course, I made you watch this because this is my favorite. This one is a 5 for me. I love all of the side characters, the townspeople, the outer towners, the rotating jam at the tables. You know, we get to know enough about each person to leave us intrigued about the mystery. And none of the characters, we don't spend a ton of time with people. Like sometimes in Hallmark movies, you know, we spend too much time with people we don't care about, like the guy with
Right.
the dog, and you're like, where did this take us? This one, they spend just enough to get to know people, even the couple that comes back to be like, are we dying? And they're like,
Oh, yeah.
no, you know, like we got to introduce them enough that
But
we can
that
be
was
like, oh
really
yeah, I
critical.
remember
That
them.
was critical to solving the mystery.
100%. So I enjoyed that. I did notice the amount of diet and weight cracks culture back in the 80s and 90s. It was very predominant. So there are some of those, which to be expected because that's the times and that's
Right.
what people joked about. So overall, though, love this episode. I watch it anytime it's on, and I seek this one out.
Do you know where the name comes from?
Keep the home fries burning.
Yep.
No idea.
It was a British World War I like soldier song. That was my
Oh.
little fun fact that I discovered for it. But once again, I thought this in when you break it down, strip away everything, a great mystery with a nice twist. I did see the twist coming for it, and I kind of figured this one out a little bit, but it didn't matter. And I think in this one, Sheriff Amos kind of was basically the Mason in this one, where he's just a
Yeah.
bumbling mess and he's just wanting to eat his food. And, you know, he just really shows that he's completely incompetent and he just wants to eat away while Jessica goes and actually does the place work. So I found him kind of the Mason. I enjoy his character and he's fun, but once again, he was there. And it's interesting how you brought in the introduction of Dr. Hazlitt, because I love Dr. Hazlitt.
Yes.
That character,
Yeah.
you know, we'll talk about in a second, but I just love that and their dynamic, and I love the way that they played off each other. And now that you provide a little more background into it, it totally makes sense because, right, it is sort of her little intellectual outlet where the two of them talk on this different level than everybody else. And even uh when the inspector lady is in there, you got Dr. Hazlitt, you know, who's really fully defending Jessica and her intelligence and her abilities on this, not Sheriff Amos, right? He's like, this is the person. And in fact, you mentioned it earlier why she's there. When they're going to talk to the inspector lady, investigator, whoever she is, and it's like, okay, I'm the sheriff. Oh, I'm the head doctor, and then, oh, I'm the writer. And she's like, oh, great, we need media. No, I'm a mystery writer. And she's like, what? And Dr. Hess's like, she is the most observant person I have ever met in my life. She needs to be in there. So I love just the way he completely supported her. But it's also funny how it's like, okay, once again, how this mystery writer can be in the investigation full-fledged was awesome. And then
Yeah.
last, what I'll say, just like the mystery, when we talk about the mystery, I loved the idea. Well, before I said it had those classic um plot devices, the closed room and things like that. Whereas I love this one, the deduction that she used when she was able to, they figured out it was the strawberry preserve, but then she was able to say, okay, well, the couple who came back, they weren't sick. Uh, Amos, who didn't like strawberry, couldn't eat strawberry, he didn't get sick. The next people, though, got sick and then like she was able to use that sequencing to figure it out, which was quite clever. And then listening to the conversation about how the one woman, and like you said, they were doing the weight stuff there, but how like, I don't know if you should be eating all that strawberry preserves. Oh, go for it. Right. So I thought that was just really clever. And I said earlier how I got my 80s feel on. I don't know if they still do that, but definitely in the 80s, like that shared food where they would just have those preserved things where it'd go from table to table to table was definitely the way restaurants rolled. Now I know like you can say, "Oh, hey, can I borrow your ketchup bottle?" But I don't think straw in this day and age, strawberry preserves are going to go quite around the room like that. So, and I'll say I thought the waitress was going to end up being the killer, and somehow she was like trying to kill somebody else and killed killed the lady by accident. So I was tricked in that aspect.
Yeah, so for me, I enjoyed the, paying with the cash, and if you looked at the cash register,
Right.
super old school, and how,
Which
she
the
was
ching
like,
ching.
right, and like the signing of the check, and then, Seth being like, "Oh, you still accept cash here," which is funny because thinking in like the 80s, I'm sure, I mean,
Oh,
my dad paid
everybody.
for cash
Yeah, yeah,
still, in the 90s. I'm like, he still will pay for cash if they accept it. So it's funny that like just how that, mindset is and how it shifted. And for
I
me, like kind
I
of
don't think
that,
I saw my parents pay for like anything with a credit card until well into the 90s. It was either cash or check. Like their credit card was literally for kind of emergency thing or when we were traveling.
yeah,
So,
yeah, same. For me, kind of that stand-up performance was that diner scene. Just I when I think of this episode, I think of sitting down at the diner and, Amos and Seth and Jessica in their booth and the jam getting passed around. So for me, that was kind of that standout scene. And just getting to know all of the people and like, oh, those ladies aren't from around here because of the way they were dressed,
right.
and again, just as we had talked about, like that's where your observation is like, oh, that looks fancy, or that's suede, or that's really expensive. And then the expensive car, like, of course, we can't forget who parked there and, sneaking back. And we had, the chef who might not have been, who lied on his resume to get here. Just
Yeah,
all of
I
those
loved
little
that, by
fun
the way. I
things.
loved that.
Yeah. And so all of that, I think, made up for a great scenes or performances overall for me.
Cinnamon on the omelet. That was awesome. And by
Now,
the
as
way,
far as, yeah.
the Rolls Royce, the guy Harrison Fraser the third. Could you have a more like, oh, I am just the rich man? But yeah, like I suspected when he was obviously just showing more remorse for his wife's friend than his wife, kind of thing. I was like, all right, that was my clue that she knew they were having the affair and poisoned it. So I kind of, like I say, this is the one that I did figure out based on that.
And then as far as we kind of said, this does it hold up in 2024, just as with the jams, they don't do that anymore. They have jams where they are closed. And I do remember a time where the jams were open and they did that. And having watched this episode, I'm like, I can't say I would even want to go to a buffet table anymore, because how easy would it be for people just to like sprinkle stuff in? I'm like, this is terrifying. So now I'm terrified. Not that I ate at buffets before, but now I'm like, I think I'll pass. I think I'll
Uh,
pass.
I don't know. I do the Mongolian. We had the Mongolian place where it's like you put everything in that bowl, all the different ingredients, smash it down, and then they put it on that big rock where they cook it, and that's all buffet style. But yeah, as far as like hometown buffet or whatever, I don't even know if those exist anymore. But
I know.
I don't know.
Ooh.
Wait, you forgot to ask about the standout character.
Well, I
Mine
said
is
mine was this performance of the
uh,
scene.
mine is Harrison Frazier the third. And a little fun fact about him is he's played by John McCook, who also stars in a recent holiday movie on
Oh,
HBO, Cinemax, whatever, not Cinemax, Max, called Candy Coated Xmas Christmas with
interesting.
his daughter Molly. So he's at this, point obviously much older, and his daughter was the main person in this holiday movie.
I
And he
like
did have
it.
and he did have Molly, because I was like, wow. Like I was trying to do the math. He had Molly when he was my age at 56. I could not imagine, just his third wife, but I could not imagine right now having a kid at this point in my life. But he ended up starring in a movie with
I
her
mean, you
later,
still have kids, just not young
there.
kids.
Well, yeah, no, my point is having a new,
Okay.
like a baby,
Uh,
going through all the stuff that you have to go through. While I loved it at the time, it's kind of nice
to be done.
not not having to deal with diapers and such an ordeal just to leave the house, or you know it's just different.
Well, here's my random fun fact. So Tom Bosley, Amos Tupper, he left the show. There's a few different rumors online, and I
Oh,
don't
this was
know
season 5, right?
100%. This was
Was it,
going into season 5. So
so this was
season
the
4
last
was his
season.
last one.
This
Season 4 was. This is season 2 that this
Oh,
episode
this
is
was
from.
season 2. Never mind.
So he wanted to star in Dowling Mysteries as a Chicago priest who solves crimes in his parish. So he wanted to be the lead again, and that lasted for 3 seasons. Another rumor was it appeared that Amos Tupper wanted his character to evolve and have a bigger role, but it's a supporting character because how are you going to bring it out of Cabot Cove now? Sidebar, because Seth Hazlitt actually does come to New York, not a ton, but he does have episodes where he comes to New York with Jessica. He also travels, like we go to see his brother, I want to say in like Montana or something. So he does travel around with Jessica, where they probably could have done that with Amos if he would have maybe stuck around. But
Well,
other than that, you're not going to be able to give him based on what we just read in that first description. It's not going to be about him. Like it's just not.
and he was like, once again, he was the Mason, right? He would
Correct.
have to be a more
There'd have to be a
sophisticated
purpose.
character
Yeah.
than what he was, other than being his character was clearly the comic sidekick who was bumbling that allowed Jessica to solve the murders. Because if you had a competent sheriff, you wouldn't need Jessica, right?
And he never evolved. They never
Right.
evolved his character to be one where you're like, yes.
And
Mort was a different
Tom Bosley is a
person.
big actor. I mean, Happy Days,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
he
He
was
just wanted to
not
be a star.
supporting actor at this point
Right.
in his career.
Right. So now we're going to head into season 5, episode 17, Sins of Castle Cove, which aired April 9th, 1989. A vindictive tell-all work of fiction mirroring Cabot Cove sends the townspeople into an uproar. And when a murder occurs following the plot of the book, it's up to Jessica to separate fact from fiction. So this
So,
was our introduction to Mort. And so that's why I wanted to watch this episode.
and by the way, we started when I was a senior in high school, and now I'm a senior in college.
And I'm 4. So
And
for me,
by the way, an 8.2. So this had the same ranking as the
home fries.
Home Fries. Yeah, Home Fries, and this had the same ranking on IMDb.
And these are both great episodes. It's a 5 for me. This one is a funny clutch your pearls episode. It's a classic one where, someone who used to live in Cabot Cove comes back, causing chaos in the town, which happens often, and just noticing, for me, I noticed how Jessica's fashion and demeanor has changed. So I told you to look for this and kind of watch from the first episode to now. And you can see it changing. And it changes, obviously, as we go through the whole 12 seasons. But it's a great episode. It shows Jessica's house, which I love, at the beauty parlor, the main street, the prices at the butcher shop. I don't know if you noticed, 89 cents a pound for pork. $5.98 for a pound of shrimp, which I was like, wow, that seems high.
Well, you had
And
Dr. Hazlitt saying how he got an entire encyclopedia and then a seafood dinner for 15
yes,
bucks.
yes, and like 18.95 for a hardcover book in the 80s. I also was like, wow, that seems kind of high as well. And then the line, "This isn't educational. It's network television." I thought that was a great line where she's like, "Is this educational TV? I don't want to watch. I don't like educational TV." And she's like, "No, it's network television."
Yes, I
Loved
found
it.
that. I caught
Um,
that too.
yeah, so some of the lines in here, and again, I say clutch your pearls because I don't know. I mean, would Hallmark dare to air something like this nowadays? I don't think so. This is 1989. And like some of these like scandalous like things
Think
that are happening, I'm
Cases of
like,
Mystery Lane had the secret gay
that is
relationship.
true.
So
That is
they
true.
are
Pushing
there,
it.
but I'll agree. This was like these characters were spicy and all the
Hilarious.
drama. That was the thing I loved about this one
Yes.
was just like the mystery itself was like but all the spiciness and the drama of all the residents of Cabot Cove, that's what I just really, really dove into. I mean, come on, you have the beauty salon gossip. That's like perfect, and I wanted more of that. That this is like definitely a silly episode,
Oh yeah.
right? Because the
Yeah.
sheriff solving it based on the
The book.
book. And just everybody's like, oh, go look at page 14. Or, it's just
Yes.
so funny about how they're all reading and literally everybody in the books, like everybody in the
Yes.
neighborhood is in the bookstore buying the darn book. I just found this a fun, fun, fun episode.
Yeah. That's how I viewed this one. I originally had a different one that I was going to pick with you, the body one that I just was watching. But then I'm like, as I'm looking through, I'm like, this one, because I wanted you to see an early Mort, because how did you like that transition
Didn't
from Amos to Mort? See, and
like
that's where I feel
it,
like you need,
eh,
I think you will like him the more you watch him, because he does warm up. I really like Mort.
which is the case often with when they do swap out characters, is you
Yeah.
don't like them at first, and then they've got to sort of develop themselves and get their own legs. And I don't have enough, like I
Yeah.
said, experience watching enough of them to say, okay, I do like it. But whenever they do swap, you're always like, no, because like despite
Yeah.
Amos being incompetent, I found him very likable and funny, and I find that character great. Whereas this guy, I was just like, he doesn't have all that charm. He's just whatever. I didn't like him. And so yeah, I probably have to see more. Midsummer, like all these ones, whenever they swap out, you always are like, nope. Doctor Who, like, I mean, sorry, I'm going way off, but people like always hate the new Doctor Who, and then halfway through the new season with them, you're like, oh, I love this Doctor Who, right? So I can see where he may evolve. Didn't like him though.
Well, and he's on 8 seasons. So this is one, where he's on way more than
It
Amos was.
because they didn't get a lead, quote unquote, lead type personality for. They got someone who they could keep as
Yeah.
a supporting character, right?
And they develop his character on this as well, because his brother comes into town and they share a little bit more about why he left New York City to come to this small town. And they do a good job, I think, of laying a little bit more of his background. And you see him and, Jessica's relationship is kind of just this fun, like, it's just a fun relationship. He calls her up and, I think that they have a good dynamic, but it does take, I feel like this might be his only second episode with her or on this
Okay.
as the sheriff. So you're still getting the warm up phase before they're trying to feel out how do we want to shape this character. So I would give a couple more with Mort just to kind of see what you think. Now, what about the mystery itself? You said you didn't like it as much.
Well, for me, it was essentially the same device as Deadly Lady, right? The killer slips by revealing an unknown detail that, you know, he knew the crime scene, which he shouldn't have known, right?
Yeah.
So it's a sort of the same type thing. Now, if we're watching them all seasons later, you may not reference it as much as watching it 48 hours later. But for me, it kind of like we've talked about before, this was the one where it didn't really matter. Why I liked it, and I thought those dramas and all the other ones were way more sophisticated when you stripped it away. For this one, it was that story, it was the drama, the spiciness of all the characters in this one for me, that just made it super enjoyable. So the mystery was like secondary, but I had a lot of fun watching it regardless.
For me, a standout scene or performance. So I picked Mrs. Mulligan. She is defending her son, who is the butcher. So
Yeah, that's
this
who
is
I
the
chose.
mom. Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I had great comedic timing. For me, the line that stuck out, um, when she says, "The woman that seduced my boy will be
Oh yeah.
struck down as if by the hand of God." And then the son was like, "Mom," and she's like, "Well, I didn't make it up. It's the way that it was wrote." I was like, that is so great. So great. So she was just a hoot. And I found her to be like just this perfect, again, comedic timing, but you could totally see this happening in a small town. Like, my boy can do no wrong. What are you doing? And Jessica, are you seducing my son? And just like, great.
Well, for me, the reason why I chose her was she is the stereotypical New Englander, right? Who's just in their own world, don't tread on me, you know, live free or die, that whole thing. And it made me think of a story. So my best friend from high school went up, he went and he was working up in New England, and I think he was actually in Vermont, and he's a runner, and he was running through rural New England on a run, and would sort of run through this property, which is just property, not like a yard or anything like that. And one day, the owner of the property is out there with his gun saying, "If you ever come on my property again, I'm killing you."
Oh my gosh.
And it's like, okay. But it's just like that New Englanders are just so salty, right? And I thought that the butcher's mom going in, I'm going to burn down all the books. Or yes, as soon as she sees Jessica, who's clearly, what, 30 years older than the butcher, and like, you harlot, and she just captured that New England spirit to me perfectly. And like you said, she was just had a good comic thing going to her. And then
Well, does it
I'll say,
hold
by
up
the
in
way, it was great
2024?
seeing the doctor again because I told you I liked him so much in the other one, and it was good seeing him come back because I was hoping he wasn't just a one-off
Oh no,
character.
he's a
So for me,
reoccurring.
I was happy to see him again.
Yeah. Does it hold up? I think it does. I think that it's, again, as I said, it's more forward than some of the Hallmark movies now, and it serves as just a great backdrop for a future movie. I think this premise of the movie is also fun. You could totally do this in a mystery movie nowadays with following a book and having an author and having some twist in there. I think this would be a fun premise for a future mystery movie.
Well, I think it kind of does too, because for once again being the time now, while they had dynasties and they had all those shows with, the drama and the philandering and everything like that, for kind of the coziness of what an episode is, this was pretty spicy, right? And so that spiciness still holds up. Would you have to tweak it? Sure, a little bit. But having everybody in the neighborhood with their secrets, that's a story that's timeless, right? So I think it totally
100%.
holds up.
Well, my random fact for this one. So Sheriff Mort actually appeared in an earlier episode in maybe like seasons 1 or 2. And he was cast as kind of the New York store owner who was always running a sale. And so then I'm assuming that's probably where they first got exposed to him. And they're like, oh, we really like him. They cast him as the sheriff. I also think he was in another episode, or in the earlier seasons as a sheriff in New York as well, if my memory is serving me right. And then Seth Hazlitt appeared in season 1 before he was cast as the doctor in season 2. And he was a murder suspect on a ranch, and him and a bunch of guys ended up murdering someone. And so
Oh wait, so
that
he's a character before he's the doctor?
correct. So both of them were.
Oh,
Yeah. So
interesting.
both of them you can see in there. So I'm assuming they probably had some great relationship with Angela Lansbury, and she must have been like, hey, I think this would be a good person. And so that's how those two got probably cast.
All right,
Well,
Andrea, is it a surprise we talked about Murder, She Wrote for
no,
a very, very long time?
because we had 4 episodes. So
That is
let's
true.
just finish with like a quick wrap up of like what we're gonna watch next week
Well, wait, question.
because
I guess
yeah,
if you were to rank the four, what order would you put them in?
my gosh. Well, first of course is my keep the home fries burning.
I agree.
I would probably say The Sins of Castle Cove, just because I love the fun dynamic of the town.
I agree.
Then The Bus would be third, and then
I agree.
last is Deadly Lady.
Look at
But
that.
not, they're all great though. I mean, like again, I ranked them all high, but
We exactly lined up
that's
4 for 4.
So our
All right.
next movie that we're gonna watch, because it was Christmas in July, or who knows how long that's going on, but the mystery movie that's the most similar or most kind of Christmas theme was Murder, She Baked, a plum pudding mystery, which aired in 2015. I have seen it, and Eric is not sure if he has. So this should be a good time. And of course, as we know from my settings location movie, this was my top pick is Murder, She Baked. So I'm excited to go into Minnesota now, small town Eden Lake, and discover what happens, even though I do know what happens.
This will probably have the old cookie jar in it then, huh?
Correct.
All right.
So
All right. Yep. Like I say, I may have seen it. I don't remember. I have not seen it. If I've seen it, I have not seen it in the last several years.
So, all right.
Good times, Andrea.
All
I will
right.
say, I feel kind of compelled, which you'll like probably go around skipping and feeling victory all day. I kind of feel compelled to like start Murder She Wrote at 1, but 288, I just don't see myself having the commitment to get through 288 episodes of there, but it is the hour, 44 minutes, so you can watch them fairly quick. So it is easy to knock the episodes out just when you're sort of in between doing things. So I think I'm going to start watching a little Murder She Wrote.
Yay.
You won me over.
Hopefully other people as well.
All right, Andrea. Until next time.
Bye.